They sold it well. Join the Marines, the Space Marines, see countless worlds, stand for human liberty against hostile forces, defend the values of humanity out on the wild frontiers of space. Only the best need apply. At least that last one was true. The training was intense, often insane. Survival training on the most extreme of worlds. How to live in vast alien desertscapes for years, decades if needs be. How to endure worlds suffering from ice ages. How to stay alive on primitive worlds. Every kind of weapon training for every occasion. I became a master at long range, at short range, at melee, at unarmed, and even with the unexpected. We were taught to be able to use anything, even improvised weaponry, even primitive armaments. Everything mankind has ever seen in or made for war was something we had to master, from the bolas to the portable railgun. Basic training took 7 years. But at the end, those of us who had endured were the best, lean, mean, killing machines. And even more, we were to be able to lead, turn a ragtag group of colonials on some distant world into capable militia units if need be. We learned all major trade pigeons, just in case we'd ever need them. We even had training on tribal integration, in case our units got stuck for years on some pre-industrial world, and we'd need to integrate with the locals for survival. All of that training, all those promises of grand adventure and defending the human spirit on the wild frontier, and this is what they did with me. Deep space emergency supply operator. Sure, I get it. I had the optimal psych profile for long-term isolation, best suited candidate for the long haul out here in the ass end of space. A giant FTL beacon with a decently sized emergency depot. And no human interaction for at least 5 years. No use of my skills. No great adventure for me. Not that I wanted to go out and kill aliens, but it would be nice knowing that I was using my skills more efficiently. That I was out there, side by side with my brothers in arms, doing the right thing, or at the very least protecting humanity and our interests. Hunting HFY pirates and Neo-Crusader fanatics on the edges of colonized space in the fastest ships mankind have. But no, only me alone in a single small space station with only a large amount of entertainment on the hollow library, and all the time in the world. I get up every morning and check the long-range radar. Nope, once again, no emergency beacons activated. I have a small standard model light skipper, used for light recon and recovery by the Terran Allied Worlds government, that theoretically be used to travel to other worlds, but it's only for potential emergencies. Still, with all the safeties and redundancies installed in modern ships, the idea of anyone actually needing it is ludicrous. I then do the daily maintenance check, which means reading the automated drone report about the status of this small lighthouse station while eating my breakfast. I don't care what the brass claims. 3D printed food doesn't taste as good as the real deal. Sure, it's safe. It will basically never rot, and it tastes all right. But a real bagel with real cheese beats the replicated stuff every day. Then I have the rest of the day for myself. Sure, the officers back at HQ made a big show of maintaining discipline every day. But how the hell is a single guy going to do that? Yell orders at himself. The idea of downloading some manner of holographic sergeant to keep me on my toes was thankfully something the brass were too dumb to ever consider. So I just clean my gun by hand once a week instead of daily, and only do a light workout. Not like the artificial gravity on this station is going to result in muscle atrophy, as I keep it on the Earth standard. I know some people like it a little lighter, but I prefer good old Terra's loving gravitational embrace. I listen to a reading of an old world text, The Meditations, by Marcus Aurelius, which my brother always recommended to me. He was right about it. Real interesting set of ideas. And Stoicism was much in vogue back in the isoculture groups that try to stay away from the fully unified Terran metaculture. Those guys usually have some good points and some interesting food places. Could be worthwhile trying to fit in with them once my tour is over. Though having the book read by the simulated voice of a 21st or 22nd century celebrity is a bit weird. Guess that stuff sells more audiobooks. While listening, I do my daily exercises. Some running. A bit of lightweight lifting. Nothing too hard. After that, a light ultrasound shower, blasting off the dirt and filth from my body through precise sound wave movement. Better than the chemical showers we had to go through during our training for combat on irradiated planets. That crap itched and tended to dissolve your hair. Water is too precious for that kind of cleaning out here. Oh, sure, I've got a huge stock of that. tens of thousands of liters, but that's for emergencies too. After that, I settled down on a couch I've dragged to the observation room. Technically, the place is full of heavy equipment that checks everything within several Sol-class parsecs. Any FTL ship passes through, they detect it, observe it, and record it. I just sign off on them once a month. No problem. But I like to sit there and stare into the void. I know some guy said that when you stare into the void stares back into you. But it's powerfully relaxing, almost like meditation. And it's something to do when the various hologames just aren't doing it, or you've lost interest in whatever book you've been reading. Just looking into that starless abyss is strangely calming, powerfully relaxing, and you get to look at that tiny dot moving slowly about in there. Sometimes I just sit and daydream about what the other guys from my unit of cadets are doing. Hey, wait, what dot? I get up from the couch and sure enough, there is something out there. Not FTL capable, too small. I align some of the equipment manually on the thing and sure enough, whatever it is, it's got power. Huh. Well, better retrieve it. Or check it out at least. I take the light skipper out slowly and get it to trail the small object that has started to orbit the station. Scans reveal that there is a lot of lead in its shielding. Primitive but effective in terms of keeping radiation out. Before power shielding, we used lead a lot. Either an old thing then, or a cheaply made container. Putting on the spacesuit, I get to the airlock. I don't particularly enjoy spacewalks, but I don't have anything better. Light skippers don't have arms and just use magnetic locks to get stuff. So I have to leave the ship and manually drag the thing inside. It's dark. A dark cylinder of unknown origin, but it doesn't register danger on any sensors I have, so it's fine. I shut down the magnetic locks and drag it with me back to the inside of the small ship. Taking it back to the station is no trouble at all. Have to. In case what's inside is hazardous, there is an isolation chamber inside the station for just such an occasion. Once I'm back, I feel pretty giddy. Gotta say. Finally, something at least a little more interesting than a full day of nothing much at all. I load the weird unknown thing into the station's hazardous containment module and let it transport the item straight to the room. I change into the station's hazmat suit with the shield belt, just in case. Wouldn't want to accidentally open the box containing the last zombie in the universe and get infected. Going into the containment room, I quickly go to work. More intensive scans reveal that while the lead prevents me from seeing what's actually inside of it, I can get the computers to tell me what it actually is. One of the few perfect safety pods ever made. Never really got popular for some reason, but anything inside of them can be kept fresh, stored in a small time-locked state. If mishandled, it could be dangerous, and their potential for misuse, the times some criminals use them to kidnap people and make sure that they'd stay inside for long enough to be declared legally dead. Yeah, that stuff lead to them getting discontinued for commercial usage, though there are some scientific areas where they still find use. The command module on the thing had been fried by something, so it would have to be opened in an alternative manner. Setting up a command link to it wasn't hard. Getting it to work together with modern tech was. Had to tell it not to try and search for updates thrice, knowing well that the OS it was running wasn't updated anymore. Finally, I got through its pitiful securities and got it to disengage the chronolock so that it could be opened properly. I don't personally know what I expected. I don't think I expected anything interesting at all. Maybe some outdated clothes. Maybe I get lucky and find food kept fresh. Maybe it'd be empty. But I didn't expect what I found. No, not at all. A Sijvaratin. Not a common alien, but they had some colony worlds out there for sure. But why was it in a human-produced containment unit? It was asleep. Correction. She, according to the scanners, was asleep. Bioscans revealed nothing, except a lack of vaccinations that had been developed in the past century or so. Punching in the command codes for them, the machines whirred to life, producing the vials for vaccinations, and I quickly did what I was supposed to. The amount of diseases that had crossed species barriers in the past, the billions of lives lost, had taught us to be wary about that stuff. Otherwise, the scans showed only some mild malnutrition, easily solved after a few weeks with the right dietary choices. and a primitive form of general anesthesia. It would wear off in about a day or so. Administering the vaccines, I checked up everything I could about the Sijvaritans, avian race. Not with hollow bones, flightless for long enough to evolve away from that. The fact that this one had a primary cover made from down feathers indicated that she was still in a very early stage of development was somewhat troubling to me. Little more than an alien toddler, especially as their aging is comparable to the human aging process, and no way to request an evac for her. Find her family. If I took her on the light skipper, they'd probably fire me. And even if this posting wasn't what I had hoped for, it was still a posting, and I have sworn an oath, and that I cannot betray. Literally, the implants inside of me makes it impossible for me to betray humanity. And if humanity has given me the order to stay here until relieved, then I am staying. Guess she is too then. Having determined that there would be no risk of biocontamination, I picked up the unconscious alien bird and carried her out to my quarters. She'd wake up from the anesthesia eventually, but instead I used a specific hypo spray to make it happen sooner, wanting to get that mild malnutrition under control. Placing her on my table, I sat down with some replicated food suitable for her species. It was weird, those black eyes opening, staring confusedly out at the world, worried and confused at me. Her beak opened, and some words in a language I've never heard before came out. I then offered her the replicated fruit. Looking at me a bit warily, she reached out with a claw hand and took it cautiously from me. Hungrily, she devoured it, then looked back at me, those big alien eyes staring up at me. I must look a bit frightening. But then again, I'm over 2 meters tall, and she's a small thing. I just gave her a bowl of water, which she took some sips from. So for a while after that, we just sat there, staring at each other. Lucky for me, this wasn't a normal social event. Having already spent 1.5 years on this assignment has left me a tad bit rusty in the personable department. Slowly, I reached out a hand, where she could see it. At first, she drew back a little, but then as she came to understand that I had no harmful intentions, took one of my large fingers in her small claw. I let her move further, let her start the next part of this awkward social interaction. She moved closer, and then rested her body against my warm hand. Softly and carefully, I let her sit there, getting used to things. Soon enough, she felt comfortable and climbed around on my arm and up to sit on my shoulder like a parrot would, which was somewhat fun. She stayed there, me occasionally passing her a small bit of fruit as I went through the rest of my day. Whenever I could feel her getting restless, I let her climb down, if that was what she wanted, or held her carefully with one arm in a hug. At evening closed in, I let her sleep on a small pillow with an emergency blanket right next to me. And that was the start of a different life for me aboard the station. Every day, I'd feed her, talk to her, play with her, and still do my chores and duties. It's important to give children at that age a lot of attention. And since practically nothing happened out here anyways, I could easily devote time to this strange child. Always she would cling to me wherever I went, as if she was scared of losing sight of me. Worrying, but sadly, one of the few things that we weren't trained to do as Space Marines was child psychology, especially xenochild psychology. Couldn't really tell what that was about, but I talked to her as much as I could, sang for her, and tried to be there, as one should. Considering the age of the container and the remoteness of this station, who knows just how long she'd been time-locked in there anyways. If they'd put her in there when those time stasis boxes were on the commercial market, then she'd have been there for at least 100 years or so, without aging, without knowing. Those things can, theoretically, stay operational for 1,000 years on battery power alone. Can't say that doesn't sound like a horrifying nightmare to me. Eventually she began using words, Terran words. Weird, highly pitched, but still Terran words. Mostly simple stuff like more, or sing, or tired. Needless to say, when she one day looked at me with those black avian eyes and said, "Dad," I was floored. I guess that makes sense. Had to sit down there and then and just let her nap on my chest for a bit. Felt like getting hit in the guts with a kinetic orbital strike. Just a tungsten rod accelerated to speeds where they can't be intercepted by orbital or planetary defenses, straight to the gut. But in a good way. Sometimes we'd sit there up in the observational deck, me reading to her, while the automatic equipment whirred quietly. It felt good, having time like that. Of course, in treating her like a human child, I probably did her some damage. Not a lot. Hopefully not a lot. But I can't say I had enough on the hollow library about her people and culture to raise her in their ways and their manner. So I just did the best I could with what I had. I suppose that's part of being a father, doing the best you can while being pretty clueless. I'd reported it into Central Command, of course. All of it. And they didn't care much. Couldn't find relatives based on the biosample data I'd sent back. So they just sent me an electronic xeno-adoption contract and told me I could collect extra pay for being a single father. Extra pay. The brass really are crazy. Definitely. And I'm not going to re-enlist, that's for sure. Maybe when I had nobody that depended on me, sure. They like those guys, the no real dependents. Makes it easier for them to deal with fatalities in the field. But now I can see that nonsense for what it is. Just luring in gullible young men like me and making us killers. While sitting there with her, the girl on my lap, I wondered what to write down on the adoption papers. She couldn't remember any name, insofar as she could render that concept into standard Terran. I ask her opinion of many names, but eventually she seems to settle down on Alice, or at the very least be most excited about it. Like in that book I've been reading her, about that Wonderland place, Alice Campbell. Mom was always bothering me about how I was the only one of her kids who hadn't given her any grandkids yet. Well, I guess as I sign this official document electronically, she'll be in for quite a surprise. A granddaughter with sky blue feathers, black beady eyes, and highly efficient claws instead of equally efficient fingers. That'll be something, all right. After it's done, I go back to the hollow library, her once more hanging onto my shoulders. I notice that she's been growing a bit, and her real feathers are kicking in more. Good. I sit down and put on a movie, and we share snacks while we watch ancient and talented actors go out on the greatest adventure in cinematic and literary history. It is, after all, a rite of passage in our family to watch the 3 movies about the One Ring, when we're old enough.